Hello and welcome to Boozy Book Reports, a simple podcast where we visit childhood classics while drinking copious amounts of alcohol. We're your hosts, Beth
and Sam.
And this month we're reporting on Of Mice and Men, first published in 1937. But we have a little special something.
We do. We have a special guest.
It's the infamous,
been
spoken on a few, notorious, the gifter of gifts. She's given us many things.
In fact, one of the things that went into one of these cocktails was actually given to me by this person.
Yes, which is Boyana.
Hi.
Our friend Boyana's here. Welcome.
Yay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're very excited. We don't do a ton of guests, so it's an honor and a privilege.
I feel special.
It's an elite club.
Yes. Yes, there's only a few. But we're super excited to have you, and especially during this very interesting book. But before we get into the book, we're going to get into the drinks. Sam made us 2 drinks that are beautiful and I'm hopefully tasty and refreshing because they look really good.
Well, also because the AC in your apartment is out.
It is. It is becoming a little bit of a sweat lodge in our podcast studio right now, but it's fine. I warned everybody. People are wearing minimal clothes. All the bits are covered, though, so we're good.
Keeping it PG.
It's not that kind of podcast.
Staying monetized.
Yes.
No, we got 2 cold drinks, which is good. So we're going to start actually with the... We'll start with the more chill of the 2. So we have a Bellini. So we're recording this in the morning, and I thought this is mimosa times, but didn't want to do a mimosa, so we did a Bellini. I made a homemade peach puree, and then it's peach puree and champagne. So cheers, ladies.
Cheers.
Yummy.
Yum.
I have to say, Boyana actually provided the Prosecco.
Oh, yeah.
Or champagne because it was a birthday gift to me, so we're using it today.
And we are embracing our... cocktail hobbies.
Our cocktail hobbies. Yep.
Yes.
Boyana is also a cocktail hobbyist.
Cocktailier.
Cocktailier.
Oh,
Cocktailier.
That's real fancy.
I know,
You
right?
make the ones out of the Free the Tipple book a lot that are...
I do. And I grow herbs just for the sole purpose of garnishing cocktails. 'Cause
Wow.
you can cook with them, but you can also drink with them. So even better.
That's awesome.
Well, what do you think?
I think they're good. Like, I don't think I've ever had a Bellini before, but it's good.
So
I love a mimosa.
definitely was expecting a stronger peach flavor, but it's very subtle.
Yep.
Which I actually like.
Yeah, they're real peaches, right? So you can make a peach puree or peach syrup by just cooking peaches in some like sugar. You can start with frozen peaches. I started with frozen peaches, and then you just cook them, and then I immersion blended them and made a little puree. They, as Beth pointed out, could be passing for baby food.
Because I'm not, you know how I am with drinks. I was just like, hey, could somebody use baby food as an alternative?
In theory, if you're hard up, probably.
Yeah,
But yeah. Maybe. So it's very subtle.
I mean,
it's good, though.
I would say if you also need a cocktail on the go, a little packet of baby
on the go, meaning
pureed
that
food.
If you are hard up and you need a roadie, hit the baby food aisle for your next cocktail ingredients.
But also
follow
you
us for
be
more
fancy.
tips. Yeah, but you want to be fancy, baby.
You get your Prosecco, you get your baby food.
You get the fancy one, not the Gerber. You get the ones that are like
in the
happy
pouches.
moms.
Yeah.
In the little packets.
Earth's best. Not endorsing any baby food per se, but I think this would be a new venue for the baby food companies.
We'll let them know, and maybe they'll
sponsor.
There we go. Always be looking
Thanks,
for
honest
sponsors.
baby.
Jessica Alba herself. All right. So the next drink we have is also a peach drink. We're calling this the George and Lennie because it's a little sweet, a little spicy, and like Lennie. The peach puree is physically thick.
Yes,
It's
hearty.
This is I did a rum-based cocktail, so it's rum. It has cardamom bitters in it, which are from Boyana. It has lime juice, and then we topped it off with ginger beer or like ginger ale for sort of a fizz.
It's good. It's very not super alcohol-y, but that might just because we're splitting it.
It's a porch pounder.
Oh, it is?
There's 2 ounces of rum in each. Well, not in each of these. But
Okay.
It could get you.
Okay.
It's
So be
geeky.
careful. Be careful. Okay.
But it is refreshing. I think it's the
It's really
ginger
good.
ale that really gives it a bit of a refreshing fizz. I like it.
Yeah.
I was
think this
mixing-
is
Yeah.
something I could drink for a morning drink
Yeah.
instead of a mimosa.
I actually love it
Now-
because, again, it is warm in here and
Yeah.
it's cooling. Has a nice cooling effect.
I like the rum with it. I was gonna make it with bourbon, but our last month's drink was a bourbon drink. They drink whiskey in the book. Yeah. So
Yay.
you like that one? This
That's
is
good.
Two drinks you like again. What happens when you have two drinks you like?
Well, here's the thing. I'm just slowly becoming more of an alcohol connoisseur, you know?
Alcoholier.
An alcoholier. So
Cocktailier.
that's what we're doing now. So it's just becoming more and more easy to drink with you.
You have become more open-minded, and also I make you sweeter drinks. And every time I make an old-fashioned, I just warn you ahead of time that that's what's happening.
Yeah. I do have to say, most of our drinks, they have kind of run a little bit sweeter recently.
It's also summer or getting warmer, and so I feel like winter is for moody, like broody, boozy drinks, old fashions, view carrés. Yeah, things that you don't put in a shaker.
Okay.
But
I want it chilled.
Yeah.
I want chilled now. Yeah.
Well, they're chilled, but you do them you stir them.
I meant like real chilled. Like, I like it when you shake and use your guns and just, get into it.
Listen, that's what these pythons
guns
are for.
out.
Sun's out, guns out.
There we go.
That's the season. It's the season for shaking cocktails.
Oh, sorry. Did you have
no.
Boyana was just showing her
my
guns.
Oh, sorry.
Shall we see them?
There is the one.
Nice guns.
I mean, this is from my 3 weeks in the gym.
As the children say, yoked.
Oh gosh.
I was gonna imagine Swole, but
Lord Swoldemort, if you will.
Sure.
Okay, that's horrific.
Swoldemort.
Exactly. Broden, king of the Broshen.
Oh my gosh.
Brosidon? Brosidon is king of the Broshen. Broden is in the House of Gaines.
Oh my gosh.
No?
Please
okay.
make that
I
stop.
love lifting. Anywho, keep going.
So I was the one to recommend this book. I read it when I was in high school. I think I was like 15 when I read this. And so I had very fond memories of this book. This was always in my head, one of my favorite books. Rereading it again was very eye-opening.
Okay, I'm going to call this the Steinbeck effect.
Okay.
Because, this is a book written by John Steinbeck. The same thing happened to me with East of Eden. I read East of Eden in high school and was like, oh my God, this book is so good. The references to Cain and Abel are so subtle. What a beautiful story. And then I reread it in graduate school and was like, he's literally smacking you over the head with the Cain and Abel story. And it's nothing is subtle and everything is bad. And what a stupid ass book. I think this is
Okay, wow.
Sorry.
Feelings.
I have strong Steinbeck feelings.
Strong.
Lord Swoldemort. Strong Steinbeck feelings, which are incredibly negative.
Oh, okay. Well, this is going to be fun. Okay. Before we get into all of that, Sam's going to read the back of the book and then I'm going to give some tidbits I found.
All right. They are an unlikely pair. George is small and quick and dark of face. Lennie, a man of tremendous size, has the mind of a young child. Yet they have formed a family clinging together in the face of loneliness and alienation. Laborers in California's dusty vegetable fields, they hustle work where they can, living hand-to-mouth existence. For George and Lennie have a plan, to own an acre of land and a shack they can call their own. When they land jobs on a ranch in the Salinas Valley, the fulfillment of their dreams seems to be within their grasp. But even George cannot guard Lennie from the provocations of a flirtatious woman, nor predict the consequences of Lennie's unswerving obedience to the things George taught him.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before we go on a Steinbeck rant, couple things. Number one, this is a very challenged book. Like it was really challenged. It was the third most challenged book in 2003, which was like 20 years ago now, which is terrifying.
Yeah, they have new books to challenge.
Yeah, but this was a
So
highly
many
challenged
new
book. And
books.
it's still one of the most assigned books in literature. Like it's a really popular.
Was that how you read it? Was it assigned?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, actually read this in class, which I have stories about and flashback PTSD.
Fun fact, my older son just read this book for his language arts class.
There
He's
we go.
a freshman, right?
Yeah, he is.
That's when
a
I read it, freshman
Alright.
year.
So
Yeah.
this was an assigned reading.
This has also been adapted into plays and opera, films, a film by Gary Sinise, who he
With
grew.
John Malkovich.
Yes, and
Mhm.
Sinise directed it too. So I was going to watch it, and then I watched the trailer. I'm like, I think I'm okay.
You know, he posts a lot on Reddit, Gary Sinise.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Mhm.
This was also a radio show, so that's exciting.
What?
And then I found out that Lennie was based on a real person that Mr. Steinbeck worked with that ended up in an asylum. So lots of interesting things. Initial reactions when you first opened the book. Sam is shaking her head.
I hate Steinbeck.
Okay.
Like, It's like we can get to it, but there is like a stylistic part that I really dislike. He writes a lot of male characters who talk a lot and don't say anything.
Yeah.
And frankly, I have enough of that in my life. I don't need a lot of fast talking dudes who say nothing.
Okay, that's fair.
Drives me nuts.
So I thought that my first impression was that the book was very short, and I did not remember it being short. I think the first time around I read it. So I should confess I didn't actually read it the second time around. I listened to it as an audiobook. So it was just 3 hours, which to me it felt like it was way more complex and layered story from the past. This time around just felt really depressing.
How old were you when you first read it?
So I was trying to remember. I must have read it either at like late high school or maybe early college years. So definitely not super young, but it was not assigned reading, where I went to school. And it definitely was translated into a foreign language. I read it most likely in Macedonian, so I don't know how the language would have come across at the time.
Yeah.
Definitely significantly harsher language than I remembered.
I think a lot of it's pretty colloquial. And there's some things that were like terms that were used that I wish had kind of been defined because it took me a little bit to understand.
I did have to Google quite a few words.
Well, they describe one of the characters as being handsy, which to me, if somebody gets handsy with you, that means like
a different thing.
you're having a good date, depending on how you feel. But they meant that he was a good boxer, that he was a fighter. And so that was something that I a couple times thought, oh, there's a lot of like sort of idiomatic phrases here. I can't imagine what that's like translating that into another language.
I don't remember, to be honest. So, and I think that was another thing that I kind of had this idea that this would be very engaging story and thought-provoking, but it was really just really sad. and I was hoping to come across like a funny part that Sam promised. So I'm waiting to hear how we're going to spin this other than mutual hatred for Steinbeck.
Fair enough. So our story opens, and I just have to say the first chapter was very wordy. Like it's a lot of description, like to the point where I was like, okay, this is just it's a little much for me.
He writes a whole chapter in Grapes of Wrath about a turtle crossing the road.
Okay.
It kills me.
Yeah. It did get better. Like after chapter 2, the writing, at least it wasn't so in-depth describing of,
super verbose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we start off, it's the Great Depression in California, and we find these two men kind of on the road, one big, one small, and it's Lennie and his friend George. Lennie got kicked in the head as a kid, or it's attributed that he got kicked in the head by a horse as a child, and so he has some developmental issues. Very sweet, loving man, really likes to pet mice, obsessed with rabbits.
Yeah.
And he's bulky. This is a bulky, big old man.
He doesn't know his own strength.
No.
The mouse he's petting, he has killed and just kept in his pocket. He doesn't know his own strength.
Yeah.
And he can be a bit rough if he's not careful.
Yeah, for sure. And then we have his cohort, George, who's just been taking care of Lennie as a favor to his Lennie's now deceased aunt. And I think he has such affection for him in the sweetest, but not it's very dude bro. I love him, but I'm not going to say I love him.
Yeah, there's even an interaction that they have where he is life would be easier without you, but I wouldn't do it.
It's very sweet. Yeah. So after we're kind of introduced to these characters, to Lennie and Jorge or George, they've just fled. What we find out later is Weed, California, which made me giggle.
Have you been to Weed?
Giggle.
Have you been to Weed?
Yeah.
I have been to Weed. We camped there during COVID. We went. We used to drive through there because we drive through when we drive between here and LA, and then we have a whole our best friends from grad school, and Kevin and I spent a whole week in Weed, California, in September 2020 in an Airbnb.
Okay,
and we had a great time. Weed they lean into weed.
Yeah. I just remember people going there and buying shirts and wearing them to school because it was look how edgy I am.
Yeah. Oh, the town leans in, but we also leaned in real hard. I mean, obviously, I work for a federal institution. I did not do those things.
Yeah.
But we did giggle a lot.
Yeah.
And yell things like 420 Blaze It at random times.
That's very good. That's
It's very
very good.
stupid.
It's
Just
fun.
getting into the spirit of
Yeah,
the
the
area.
spirit of weed.
The spirit of weed.
One of the things one of the things I actually really loved about this book was when George was talking to Lennie, they were like, you know, he has this dead mouse. George makes him throw it out. And they start talking about this idealistic farm they're going to purchase,
Yeah.
you know, this little acre of land or whatever
They're
it's
going to
going to
live
be.
off the fat of the land.
Yeah, they're going to have rabbits, or Lennie's begging to have rabbits, but they're just going to, you know, they know what they want. They know the piece of land. They're just working towards it. And they're like, we just need a couple more jobs. We just need a couple more jobs. And so they're headed to this new job, and some calamities ensue. I want to take a quick little pause here, though, because when I was reading this book in high school, because we're reading it in class,
Right.
and my default was black men. So I'm picturing these two black guys, Lennie and George, going. And then I was rudely awakened that they were not black.
Well, they say on the back of the book he's dark of face. So I also had a thought, like while I was reading it
Yeah.
this time, I was like, oh, are maybe they're black, maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
And then
I thought they were people of color for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah, and then
Pretty quickly we find out no, because they end up on this ranch, which they come in later than they thought they would, and so they're not there in the morning, and the boss is kind of annoyed, and there's this guy named Slim that's like the top ranch hand, and George and Lennie arrive. Everybody's kind of out doing their thing, and they meet this like crouchy old caretaker named Candy. He's like sweeping out the bunks and stuff, and kind of
Yeah.
giving them
he's
some
really
grief.
old,
Yeah,
as is his dog.
as is his dog, which problematic later on. And so he starts, everybody, I can't remember if Slim or Candy gives him kind of a rundown of everybody that works there. And like not too far into it, they are using like the N-word hard R.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did not remember any of that. And it's like, I had totally blocked that out until I started reading it. And then I remembered in class, because we're reading this out loud in class. And I went to a primarily white institution, right? Like I think I graduated with 3 black kids. So it was me.
Yeah.
And I just remember like the teacher would always like pause and not say that word, except, or she'd say in, you know, like to like,
Yeah.
but they're like, she gave people the option in class if how they wanted to like proceed. And I just remember this one dopey looking kid with a bowl cut in class. I would say his name, but whatever, I'm not going to. And he would always say it like emphasize with hard R when he got to say it. It was like
Finally, an opportunity to
Yeah.
say what he's been
probably
wanting
thought
to
he-
say
he
for a
thought
long
he
time.
was so like
super
edgy and
edgelord.
cool.
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, anyway, so it's like I had totally blocked all that out. And I noticed like as I was reading this, I think I did the same thing when I was a kid. I just would skim over all of that.
Yeah.
And didn't really get into it. So
Which there is the one the stable buck, or the
Yeah.
guy who's like in charge of the mules, right?
Yeah.
He's like the guy in the stable. He like has his own place basically. He doesn't live in the bunkhouse with the others, which honestly seems like he had a good deal.
he had a great deal. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounded
As far as
real.
that goes. Yeah.
But he was like kind of lonely. There's like a scene later in
Yeah.
the book where they come and sit in his room, and he's like trying to act like he doesn't care, but you know
Yeah,
he's
obviously
actually
he
kind
does,
of
yeah.
excited to have people stay. So
Yeah.
he's like ostracized and stuff.
Yeah.
He's not allowed to eat with them. He's not allowed to.
Play cards with them,
Yeah.
drink with them, go to the whorehouse with them, like nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, but as we're doing intros, we meet Curly,
Mm-hmm.
who is the ranch foreman's son.
Mm.
And I thought Curly was the hottest guy because Curly wears a glove with Vaseline for his to keep his hands soft for his wife.
They all kept like shitting on this, and I had a good laugh because we were talking about this. So I have a group of girlfriends that we have what we call smut chat,
Okay,
where
love that.
yeah, where we talk about all the smutty books we read. And we were talking about the trope of like a like I want a man with calloused hands, and all the ladies in the chat were like, but why?
Yeah,
Like,
seriously.
why do you want to get like itched? You know,
Yes.
while you're, like be like loofah'd while you're making out. Which I said stubble is the same, and then that was apparently a controversial freaking
okay.
statement. But you know, yeah, he's like rolling around in his glove, and he's like secretly like
Lotion.
Moisturizing.
I kept
puts the
imagining
moisturizer on.
I'm actually imagining like the loofah gloves for
Yeah.
like showering and
Oh my
exfoliating. In my mind, that's what it was, like a cosmetic glove.
I kept thinking of the ones that are like for foot treatment. Like
Oh,
I have these
yeah.
little foot sockies, and they're very gushy. And I kept thinking,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how's he grabbing bags of barley?
Right?
If
Like,
he's like got this gushy ass hand.
Well, it's like a sweaty Vaseline hand just sounds awful. But again, 15-year-old me was like, this is very romantic. Like this is this is
peak.
special.
Well,
He's a good man.
the elderly woman in me was like, of all the shitty ways you're treating everybody else, including your wife, this is where you decide to pull all stops and really consider how soft your hand is.
But
It's
just a single hand.
just a
Do
single
you think
hand.
he's just like running one hand down her like, hey girl?
I got my hand just for you.
Well, it's very alluded to that he's not a great lover in this book, or that they're really not even
Well, she
hooking
is,
up.
to be
'Cause
fair, on the prowl.
She's on the prowl.
the whole time.
Yeah.
She's like, hi, are you man? I like that about you.
Yeah, literally. As soon as these new guys show up, they're like kind of unpacking, and girlfriend just comes right in. She's wearing red lipstick. She's like done
Her
up on this
ostrich
ranch.
feather shoes, which on a ranch sound incredibly impractical.
So impractical. I mean,
And I
it
have
just-
like hay in her ostrich feathers.
right? And she's just like just casually kind of flirting with these ranch hands, and like it's super awkward, and it's
This
very
is-
pick me.
Yes, I was gonna say. I feel like we all have known. I mean, I have also been this girl at some point where, like, this lady when I
With
was.
ostrich shoes.
No, God, I was way too practical for that. But I was like, "Hello, I would like to be the queen of the nerds." You know, like, hello,
Sam, the queen
boys."
of the nerds.
No, I feel like she comes across to me as somebody who's like incredibly insecure and lonely.
So I think
Yeah.
in my mind, the whole story or the whole backstory, or maybe front story as well, the whole point of this book was just loneliness and how you have a cast of characters, some of them quite similar to each other, and they're just all incredibly sad and lonely, and
Yeah,
they
And
all like try to find some sort of a connection that just keeps on backfiring,
yeah. Whether
and
it's each
it
other,
all just ends in
Misery.
more misery. Yeah.
There's also this underlying current of longing. You know,
Yeah.
like she was longing. She married, you know, she's so beautiful and wonderful and spectacular.
yeah,
that
and
she thought she was
everyone
gonna
wanted to be an actress.
And
Right.
she was going to
Yeah.
be in Hollywood, and she had opportunities to marry, you know, or be with a producer or director. And what would her life be if she had done that? You know,
Yeah.
it's same with like Candy, the guy that's working in the
Bunkhouse.
bunkhouse cleaning up, and it's like he has a longing, and he lost a limb. I believe it was an arm, hand type of situation in the farm, and now like they keep him around just to like clean up. I mean, obviously
And
George
he
and
sort of
Lennie.
he sees the end, right? He's
Yeah.
like, they're gonna kick me out, and it's not like my dog. They can't just take me out and shoot me.
Yeah.
It's almost worse.
Yeah, which that was part of the worst part of the book. So,
Yes.
like the first night the guys are there, they're all kind of like ribbing each other and trying to figure each other out. And Curly is real. He's like he has little man syndrome. Like
For sure. And George recognized that.
Absolutely.
Recognizes that. He's like, Lennie, stay away from this guy. He's gonna pick a fight with
yeah,
you.
and Lennie could crush his skull if he wanted to.
Mm.
So Slim has this dog, and she has a ton of babies, and which he proceeds to drown like 4 of them, which was very sad, or
Oh,
kill them
yeah.
immediately. I was
He's
just like,
well, she
oh.
can't handle it.
Yeah,
so,
it was like super awful. And so then Lennie's super excited because he's like, "Can I have a dog?"
yeah.
And then, you know, they're talking about how Candy, the guy that is cleaning up after them, his dog is really old. It smells. He's like hand like spooning it milk, lovingly taking care of this dog. And one of the other ranchers like, let me just take it out of its misery.
Yeah.
And finally, like they just keep pushing him, and Candy's like, fine. And he lays on his bunk and just stares straight up at the ceiling. And this guy takes his dog out, and it's like he happens to have a gun. So he goes out, and it's just taking forever. And people are like, what's taking so long? And then finally you hear the shot. And poor Candy's just listening there to his like dog being murdered.
Yeah.
It was awful. And I would say I shed a little baby tear and like snuggled my cat a little bit.
No, I had a similar experience, like a similar feeling. Yeah, I kept, and it's really drawn out because he's like, you're waiting to, as
Yes.
the reader, you're waiting for the shot because you're like, okay, come on, get this over with. And, or maybe they'll like say, just kidding, he's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
but they don't.
No, it's a Steinbeck book. They kill him.
It was that was a very long scene. So I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of like, not that anybody's a big fan of this, but like, I don't like depictions of like kittens and dogs being murdered in books or in film.
This is another one of those like themes that keep showing up as like things that can't exist in this world. We'll just kill it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it happens obviously in this book several times. It's like, oh, this dog's too old. We're going to kill it. Oh, this dog has too many puppies. We're just going to kill it. It's like this like sacrifice of things that are like can't be in this world because they are too blank, right?
Yeah.
They don't fit the mold of what people expect.
Mm-hmm.
So, no,
I
think
I thought part of it was also like making the hard decision and the hard decision of what's the kinder thing to do. Like, is it worth, having this dog live in misery or having like all the puppies suffer because the mother can't contain those. And I think that's really another part that just, as you said, keeps on coming back.
Yeah.
In the book with animals and people, and it just how do you choose between two just awful outcomes?
Yeah. One side of the coin is this thing can't exist in this society or this world, so we'll just kill it. And the other side is that, well, it's actually kind of cruel to make it live in this
through
society.
the whole thing. So it just seems to be so much of it that I wish there was like a redeeming moment in the book, which.
Yeah, a moment of like where somebody chooses kindness. Maybe that's like our softness, but it's
generational softness.
It is our generation, but this also I'd say generational softness. But these are like, I don't want to get into some details, but these are like discussions and questions that we had with my grandparents on farms in general.
Yeah.
Right? These are like the hard decisions you make on farms. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong or any of that. I'm not making a moral judgment, but these are conversations that we had as, if your horse breaks a leg, horses cannot recover.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, or if a horse gets colic, the horse cannot recover because of the way they're built. So,
and it's also like the Great Depression. So like resources are very, very tight. So everybody is scrambling for a tiny piece of a tiny, tiny pie.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge point of a lot of his books in general is that, while it's quite fecund and, fertile and stuff, the Salinas Valley or the like all that Central Valley of California is a hard place to live because it is, they irrigate there, but it's dry, it's hard. It's a hard life for everybody in that area.
Well, the funny thing I found at the very beginning where they're having this idealized goal of just living on a farm with the rabbits and the animals and whatnot. And I kept thinking, was like, wow, that actually sounds like a really hard life. Yep. It's probably not like what I would have chosen if I was to, dream of a easy life. It would not have been like getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning to milk the cow and
tend your 50 head of rabbits.
Exactly. So many rabbits.
Yeah. What are you're going to eat rabbit stew? You get rabbit fever. If you only eat rabbits, you get rabbit fever.
Is that real?
Because they don't have enough fat.
What is rabbit fever?
Well, basically, you kind of go a little loony because you don't have enough fat to support your brain if you're only eating rabbits because they're very lean animals. So you actually have to like supplement your diet. It's called rabbit fever, apparently.
Oh my gosh.
I learned about this in middle school and been in Colorado.
Interesting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What if you eat like rabbits with butter?
Then you can do that's
you're
fine.
good.
Yeah,
you're
if
good.
you cook the rabbit in the butter.
Like rabbit
but
is
if you just eating
central to your diet.
Yes, if that's like the only meat you're eating. And you're like
Interesting.
eating like meat and vegetables, and you're just like, you can get. It's called rabbit fever. Somebody look this up because like that's what I was told in middle school, and that has stuck with me.
Don't worry.
And that's like one of these like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yep.
If you only eat rabbits, you will go crazy.
That's right.
I'll put a link to a research paper in the show notes.
Find it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find
there
it.
you go.
So we've been introduced to everybody. We kind of see a little bit of conflict, and then right away it's kind of funny how quickly Candy sees, I really think he sees George and Lennie as a way out.
Yes.
And they start, I think George was a little drunk or something, or Lennie told him about the farm.
Yes, Lennie told him.
Yeah, I think George is always like, don't tell anybody anything, you know?
I know. I had a moment where I was like, damn it, Lennie.
Yeah.
No.
Like George was very specific. He's like, listen, when we meet the new boss man, you're not going to tell him anything.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell him what went on, because we find out later that they were driven out of weed because Lennie saw a girl and touched her dress because the dress looked pretty. And then she's like, let go. And he's like, I can't. And he just held on.
Yeah.
And then she accused him of sexually assaulting her.
Yeah.
Which again, that's why I thought it was black dudes. I was like, oh, okay, it's just like Emmett Till, like, you know, that lady that
it's fits the narrative,
still
right?
alive today and just walking around free. Anywho, so Candy's all in. He's like, hey guys, I have some money.
Yeah.
I would love to, like, can I come, can basically, if I help buy this land,
Yeah.
will you let me work until I can't and then just let me live?
Yeah. Well, so I think that he finds like a bit of a kindred spirit. There's a point in the book where Slim is questioning the sort of kind of head of the ranch hands or whatever. Slim sort of says, you know, it's funny, I never see two guys travel together, which is kind of ironic. He points out, he's like, these guys are all very lonely, but they don't travel with people. It's cool that you have what you have going on, you know, like it's good for you to have somebody to care for and to care for you. And so I think Candy sees that. And he does offer things. He offers quite a bit of money.
A lot of
their
money.
goal. Yeah. And also he's like, you can have my, like, you know, retirement, whatever's left of it, you can have it.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to will it all to you guys if you just let me be in the crew.
Yeah. And so I think that he sees, one, a bit of a kindred spirit, an answer to his loneliness, but also he does offer them quite a bit of like,
it's like
in
$350.
return. Yeah, which is really close to what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
they have like $10.
Yeah. They're like, we have nothing. We have nothing. And he's
Yeah.
like, but you have each other and I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like, don't shoot me.
Yeah.
When I'm too old to work, just let me die.
Pretty much. So George is feeling a little bit more comfortable now. Like it's like their first payday and he decides to go out on the town with the other ranch hands,
To go to the
leaving
whorehouse.
Lennie behind, which the whorehouse is a nice whorehouse, at least.
Yeah, it's Miss Susie's is nicer than Miss Clara's. Miss Clara's is a real dump hole.
I do want to point out that was like the most complex description of female characters in the book, because I was like, oh, well, that you took the time to talk about the women as in terms of how nice of a whorehouse they're running.
Welcome to a freaking Steinbeck
Is
novel.
that the
I feel
Steinbeck?
like East of Eden is half like descriptions of whorehouses and brothels, because it is like a place where women can be independent. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not obviously a Steinbeck expert, but I feel like his descriptions of women are either it's Madonna whore complex all the time. It's either they are these shining examples of like goodness and they all look like little white baby angels, or they're whores.
Yeah.
And that's
Deserving horse.
yeah, exactly. That flirty hoe got what was coming.
Yeah.
She had it coming.
Yeah.
And they talk about her like that. They're really all very rude. And she even says, when I get you guys alone, y'all are nice to me.
Yeah.
But the minute you guys are in a crowd, you're all scared to talk to me. You're all scared.
This is Curly's wife.
Yeah. But she even calls them out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he meant that to be a moment, but I was like, yeah, girl.
Yeah.
You go, girl.
Get them.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they all talk to you when you're by yourself because they all like flirting with you. But the minute they're in a crowd, they act like you're the problem. And you're just a lonely lady who thought she was going to be an actress and is
my
wearing
gosh.
some inappropriate shoes on a ranch.
I don't know why I'm on like Pearl TikTok. I don't know if you've ever seen this horror film Pearl.
No.
And it's like it's a A24 movie and there's like a bunch of them and it's their origin stories for this other movie that came out. Anyway, she's just like this lonely girl that lives on a farm and she just has big ambitions and she also has to be like a sociopath, but she's just like, I'm a star. She's trying to get like booked by Hollywood and it drives her freaking insane. But anyway, it reminded me of this girl of just like so desperate to get out of her circumstances that she marries this guy because, you know, at least his dad has money. And now she lives on this crappy ranch with all these ranch hands. There's no glamour to it. And she's just trying to like get her fix of attention any way she can.
Yeah, she has no friends. She has no,
Camaraderie. There's no, I'm guessing there's probably no other woman on on
No,
the ranch.
literally, you have Miss Susie or Miss Clara or the whores that work at their respective
Yeah.
institutions.
So
like
good times.
Yeah, I feel like this was like an East of Eden too, where like the women were either they're all these like, especially if they're a woman with any moral complexity, they're just these evil sociopaths.
Oh yeah.
And so I had an interesting discussion with my brother because I told him we were reading this book for the podcast, and he said I don't really like the characterization of a person with special needs. In this book.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I said, while I agree, I also think the characterization of just women is
In general.
also bad.
And of the black man, like
Everybody.
everybody.
That's not a-
They're all
That's not
bad.
a-
They're all bad. Even George, who's maybe
Yeah.
the nicest person in the book, is like kind of an asshole to Lennie
Yeah.
sometimes.
Mhm. I mean,
Nobody's nice.
I would love to see Steinbeck's like friend group at the time of him writing this to
Just
see if
like
it was
him and
diverse.
Hemingway.
Just like
no, it
getting
wasn't.
trashed.
Did you know any women that you actually liked? That would be my question.
Well, like one of his main characters, actually the most morally complex and interesting character in East of Eden is like an Asian man who pretends to only speak in like basically like broken English, and then he's really like a well-read person. But he writes this character he is like the best character in the book. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if like sometimes I can't tell if like Steinbeck just hasn't aged well, but they're all these just like fast talking car salesmen to me that like are like, you know, Curly's handsy. Don't you know? We're gonna go down to the farm later in the night and we're gonna go to the whorehouse. You know, Miss Susie's got the best whorehouse. Her girls are nice. She only costs $2 for a ride, and then
Not
you
the
can have a little whiskey.
transcontinental accent. I love it though. I love it. It is kind of like that. So
Yeah.
So I haven't rewritten any of the other Steinbeck books lately, but it does feel like it's just the cliff notes of an actual book that could have been written.
That could
like,
be.
did you just run out of time when writing the book? Like, you could have developed these characters. They're all underdeveloped.
yeah, they said that this is a novelette.
Not bad.
Oh,
So some people are like, this isn't really a true full novel because it is really like 100 pages.
Yeah.
I mean, it does tell a complete story. It's just not a
It's not hashed out like you said.
yeah.
Boy.
It's not
Yeah,
a deep.
it's
It's
not-
not a deep story.
it feels like you could have told this story with like 4 characters that you could develop versus the 12 characters that are just kind of mentioned.
yeah.
So
And also, why do they all have names that start with C?
I found
Very
that very
confusing.
confusing,
Yeah,
but
Crooks,
I
Curly,
imagine that's just me and my
Candy.
memory issues. I
No.
just could not remember the names.
It's a thing. Well, and we're going to jump into Crooks. So Lennie's been left behind because everybody's the whorehouse. Lennie's not going to go. He just wants to pet his dog. And so as he's like going to like look at his dog in the stable, he runs into Crooks's little like shack
Yeah.
in the stable. The black man has to stay in the shack, of course. And he's made this nice little home for himself. And he's basically like, Lennie's like, hey, how's it going? Let me hang out. What
Yeah.
are you doing? And Crooks is like, well, you can't be in here. You're not allowed in here. And finally he's like, well, you can just come in, take a seat. And like,
Yeah.
you really do see his loneliness come through. You really see how he starts to believe in the hope of the farm that Lennie and George want to get to.
Yeah.
He kind of like hears about it and he's like, oh, I could be part of this. Eventually, Candy comes in and they're talking. And
It's
then
like all the lonely people.
all the lonely people and the left behind people. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of like the scraps. Like, you guys, we don't see value in you, so you can't hang out with us, which is pretty annoying.
No, just annoying. Just a mild adjective for it.
Yeah. Well, and then Curly's wife comes in. She's such a hooch. And she just like comes in and she's like trying to flirt and she's really going after Lennie, which is a choice.
Yeah, that was a weird thing.
I feel like sometimes people have radar for like who is the most vulnerable. And I think she just went after who the most vulnerable person was. Because Candy's not going to buy into it. Crooks is definitely not going to do anything. But she might be able to win over Lennie, make her husband jealous, and start a little drama.
Yeah, and live her own little soap opera. I mean, she is kind of a predator in that way.
Yeah. Oh, well, and she threatened to have Crooks lynched. So I'm like,
yeah, that
girl,
was pretty fucky.
yeah. I was like, I don't have any sympathy for you, honestly. And thankfully the ranch hands return and then everybody just kind of goes out. And so the next day is pretty bad though. So It's like a free day. The guys are out playing games, which sounded boring AF,
They
but
play
it was
horseshoes. That's kind of fun, right?
sounded boring AF.
Okay.
It's just like cornhole to me. I'm like, what are we doing?
Oh,
And why is
you're
there a
not born to
national,
corn?
international, not born to corn?
The worst thing I ever saw one time, we were watching cornhole after like a frisbee tournament because we were tired and sitting in the hotel room, and ESPN promised that if we stayed tuned, we would see more hole action, and
Stop.
everybody looked at each other in the room and we're like,
No.
what?
Please make it stop. Yeah. I just have seen people be way too competitive at
Yeah.
these like really
A lawn game. You're competitive at a lawn game.
Yeah, but there are these like weird sports that are now like have, like leagues. Like
Yeah.
there's national leagues for pickleball, cornhole.
If your sport is
That-
featured, and I say this as somebody who is definitely plays a sport very seriously that could be featured here, if it is going to be on ESPN 8, the Ocho, calm yourself.
Yeah.
Take a moment.
I need you to bring it down a
if you've
notch.
ever played where you have to play with an alcoholic beverage in hand or in a costume, you don't get to be serious about stuff.
Yeah, I just
Chill.
need you to be real.
Yeah.
Be real.
Yeah.
Like just be real.
Take it for what it is.
Yeah. Well,
Which,
poor
isn't it like a thing you do while we're waiting for a patio table to open up at the local pub? 'Cause
Absolutely.
That's what I associate with cornhole.
Don't
Yeah.
tell my friend Todd, but yes. It's what you play at the bar that has oversized games.
I just want to make sure that, being somewhat
Yeah.
culturally challenged in the traditions of American sport, I do need to figure out where all the sports
And-
stand.
Pickleball people, cornhole people, don't come for me. I play ultimate frisbee. We're stupid. We play in sparkles. Just chill.
just chill. Just chill. Speaking of calm shit, Lennie is in this little farm stable thing petting his dog. And he's petting it and he's petting it.
And like we all saw this coming.
We saw it coming and he petted it too much.
And he kept taking it
Overpetted
out. And
the dog.
everybody told him to quit
It's
taking
too-
it out of the nest. Leave the
it's too
He just
little.
wants to touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he touches it too much.
He kills the puppy.
Also, I feel like there's a simple solution to his obsession with soft things.
A tiny velvet doll.
Yeah, something. There's
Yeah,
like
a rabbit's foot.
get this man
Yeah.
a soft fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really not that hard. It doesn't have to be like mice he's squishing or live puppies.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Maybe nothing live.
nothing.
Yeah,
There-
feed him
but
an
there's a
inanimate
lot of
object.
things
Yeah.
that are soft, and
We have an emotional support shark in our office
that's
because sometimes my office mate needs to touch soft things and feel better about life.
I
And
mean,
so therefore we have it, and
you-
it's not a real shark. It's a stuffed shark from IKEA.
it's have most of my wardrobe.
Yeah,
All of
Costco
my
soft.
It's exactly there's
Costco
options.
soft.
It is
can
Costco
buy
soft is
soft.
a special kind of soft.
You can buy it in wholesale.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately for Lennie, what's done is done. And now he's freaking out because he knows George is going to be upset with him. And like earlier on, George kind of told Lennie, like when they were first coming into town and they were sitting and waiting to go to the actual ranch, they had a night underneath the stars. And he's like, hey, Lennie, if anything ever happens, I want you to come back here and I'll find you. And so Lennie's kind of debating in this. I'm like, oh, crap, is this severe enough that I need to run away? Maybe I'll just throw the puppy in the trash. I don't know. And then in comes the harlot herself.
But she's never given a name. He couldn't come up with a single C name for her.
Yeah. Curly's wife. There
Yeah,
you go.
That's the whole time. She's
Yeah.
never given a name. They're just like
Should've-
a flirtatious woman.
Yeah.
Cindy.
Cindy.
Should have been a Cindy.
She said been Cindy.
What a slutty name.
Cynthia.
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
Oh,
That's a good stripper name.
Spicy. My
Um,
cinnamon, and I'm here for you.
So she's realizing what happened, and Lennie's kind of freaking out, and she's just like, trying to flirt with him, which is so awkward.
Yeah, I struggled with this a lot because I kept thinking, like, this man obviously has special needs. Everybody
Yeah.
comments on it. Like, why? I don't know. It just feels very like exploitative.
Oh, absolutely.
Super weird.
Well, and earlier, Curly did pick a fight with Lennie, and he's like punching him in the face and slapping him. And finally, George is like, release, like, go ahead. And then
get him.
get him. And Lennie grabs his hand and crushes his
Yeah.
hand.
And then everybody's like, yeah, you did that in the machine. I don't know what you're talking about. Lennie
Mhm.
crushed your hand. Because like everybody does see. This is the one thing that killed me. Everybody does see the like inherent goodness that like Lennie does things, but he doesn't mean to.
Mm-mm.
He just doesn't understand his own strength. He's not inherently a mean person. You know, it really is a foil. Like the foil is between him and Curly's wife, right?
Yeah.
She like intentionally is trying to stir shit up.
Yes.
And Lennie stirs shit up all the time, but does not mean to.
No. And so all the guys are playing and she's in there like, and she's talking about how she wanted to be a movie star and how lonely she is and stuff. And then all of a sudden, like, she's like, oh, so you like soft things? You want to touch my hair? And Lennie's trying to like stay away from this woman because George said don't. And then she gives a gorgeous lock of hair and that's really tempting. It looks really soft.
Yeah.
And so he touches it and it's just like, oh, it is soft. And then she's like, let go. And he's like, let me hold on harder. And then she starts freaking out and nobody can hear her screaming and he keeps holding on harder till he breaks her neck.
Again, a plushie would have done.
A plushie. Oh my God.
Simple solutions. But also, the thing that I think it's really missing is any level of maturity of all the characters to understand that, like, Lennie's portrayed as somebody with like mental and emotional maturity of a toddler, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you can control toddlers' behaviors with threats and expectations that they are gonna act like not toddlers just because it's not convenient for you. So the whole idea, if you do something that we all know you're gonna do because you don't have that level of maturity and control, is just frustrating, and then it's self-perpetuating. So, and nowhere in the book is it mentioned that, you know what, it's all the grown-ups just being idiots.
Yeah.
In this book, including George, who is presumably most familiar with,
yes,
like, really, as a grown adult, would you have left your 2-year-old toddler alone on a farm with puppies and dangerous equipment?
Yeah.
No.
Frankly, I think you're right. I think this is the problem, is that everybody just keeps going on like la da da, because there is a bit of exploitation of Lennie too, because he's they talk about
very
this.
strong
He's
and
very
fast.
strong. He's a good worker, and they're happy to use him. And then when he messes up, I mean, George does just kind of like run away with him and tries to keep taking care of him. But you're right about George. He just is like, keeps saying like, well, this time he'll learn to not kill. Like the third thing,
like
he's
this
like
is
assaulted.
presumably like a grown man, maybe in like, you know, late 20s, 30s. That's what I'm imagining. But also, like, George knows what's coming and that things are not gonna change, right?
Yeah.
Like, before they get into the farm, he knows that shit's gonna go south, whether it's week 1 or week 3. So that's why they have a contingency plan.
Yes.
If something goes wrong, this is where you go. And I think in my mind, part of this is, so George keeps on imagining this alternative reality of, you know, what if this wasn't my life, right? What if I didn't have to care about this giant baby that's George, right? What if I had the freedom to go wherever I want to go and maybe have a traditional family or... So in a way, it makes you wonder if, you know, part of his behavior is, well, what if I create a situation where I don't have to make the choice? What if, you know, I let him does the choice for me? So then I don't have to make that my own moral judgment.
Oh, I guess we gotta run away from weed. Oh, I guess
Right.
you know, have to take this Luger and
because it's that dissonance of, well, I'm caring of this person, but I'm also resentful of this life, and I also want to kind of fluctuate between, you know, treating this person as a very powerful giant and a little child. And I think that's really the whole pendulum that swings throughout the book for me.
Well, this comes back to your original theme that you mentioned, which is that there's always the theme of hard choices, and this is what happens when George doesn't make the hard choice. This is
He just waits for things to play out, even though he does know eventually how will they play out, because it has happened, you know, multiple times. And again, it's the notion of like, well, children eventually grow up, you know, if they don't have developmental difficulties, and they do start to learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
In the case of Lennie, he doesn't. This is like an ongoing cycle. And I think in a way, George imagines, well, this is how the rest of my life's going to be. So I'm just going to
Ride it out.
either
until
write it
fails.
out or just let,
Yeah.
do a couple of omissions and let somebody else do the decision for me.
Well, I'm wondering too if like with the with Candy saying like, "Hey, I have some money."
Mhm.
Like George wrote to the people that own the property, the old
Yeah.
widow or whatever, "Hey, we want to give you like, a down payment basically for your property." I'm wondering if in the back of his head he was like, "This is my out." And
Yeah.
like I actually have the means now. I don't have to think about Lennie as closely in the back
Right.
of his head. That's just that little bit of like freedom.
Maybe a little. And I mean, maybe that's something I think that he's a caretaker, right?
Yeah.
Which is a
Yeah.
place where
yeah.
people get incredibly fatigued and
Burnt
get tired.
It's
and
a difficult role.
it's a
right?
very difficult role. And so I wonder, I still think that George, while he doesn't want to make the hard decisions, does care for
Oh,
Lennie.
absolutely.
And so I think that maybe that is a fleeting thought, but I don't think that is his intent. Even if
No.
he just keeps
No,
making
no.
stupid decisions
Yeah.
because
It's just
of
that
his care.
it's just that sliver of like,
yeah. What if I didn't?
what if I did it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
What
I
if
mean, it's
what if
it's
they
human,
weren't here?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It's human, right?
Yeah.
It's and especially when you're continuously,
yep.
facing that demand that you have to stay in this infinite loop and nothing will ever change
Yeah.
Yeah.
for you. So I think from that point of view, maybe George was the only sort of complex character that had those layers of how do you exist in this, sort of hyper harsh reality where
Yeah.
as an individual you have to, appear to not care, appear to not be lonely, but at the same time also demonstrates some subtleties of, well, you do care, whether it's for dogs or for
Yeah. No one-
disadvantaged people or anything else, or just maintaining a dream of a different future. So
Yeah. Nobody feels good about Candy's dog being shot. Nobody feels good about George. Nobody feels good about the puppies. But
Yeah.
but just pretending it doesn't exist doesn't make it better.
No.
can I just point out that I just thought Curly across the board was just a douche canoe?
Yes.
Is he the only, to me, that he was the only entirely
Yeah.
unlovable
Because
character?
he's so
in this-
entitled and like
Well,
privileged and gross.
Are we forgetting about that handful of Vaseline that
That's
he's
true.
just rocking?
Never
I mean,
take
there
that
you
back. He's the hottest on the ranch.
That's
No,
right.
but,
Douche canoe with a soft
Douche canoe
one
with
hand.
One as a single soft hand. You think it's right or left? That's what I want to know.
I don't want to know.
I
Actually.
want to know. No, he's so. I think you're right about that. Curly is like the one that's like morally terrible, but otherwise, I think everyone is pretty morally gray,
Yeah.
except Lennie. I think Lennie. I mean, Lennie does terrible things.
But
This reminds me. There's like a Herman Melville book, Billy Budd, where it's like it's a Christ figure. The main character is a Christ figure, and he does terrible things, but he's like not actually a bad person. He does it on accident,
Mhm.
and I feel the same way about Lennie. He's like a sacrificial character,
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
does things, but the intent isn't there.
Yeah. So girlfriend's dead.
Yeah.
Candy comes into the stable for whatever reason. He finds her he's like, "Ma'am, this is not a great place to take a nap."
Okay, I did actually laugh at that point. I was like, "Oh, this is terrible," but I shouldn't laugh.
this was your first thought.
Yeah, and he recognizes and realizes who did what, and George comes in and they make kind of a plan. Like, "Hey, I need you." George is like, "Give me some time. I know where Lennie's at." Then Candy goes out and tells everybody, and Curly is immediately like let's lynch this man.
Yeah, lynch mob.
Let's get him where he's done. George kind of gets away from the group, and everybody's looking, and he goes right to Lennie, and he had taken the gun of the guy that shot Candy's dog, and Lennie's just sitting in this little like area, like in the shade trees type of thing. I think it was evening by that point anyway, and like he's like, "Tell me, I did a bad thing, I didn't mean to," all this stuff, and George is just comforting him, and Lennie basically is just like, "Just tell me about the farm again," and blah blah blah, and like George is telling about the farm, and then just like caps him in the head.
I feel like I did not understand this cultural reference until reading this, but I was like, I'm pretty sure this is like this shows up in other medium, like
to
this
gently
scene.
tell somebody
Yeah,
something and
exactly,
then shoot them while they're at peace.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like,
it does.
I think that's the source of this.
Yeah. And there's honestly kind of a beautiful moment at the end because like George can hear the lynch mob closing in on them. And
Mhm.
so after he shoots Lennie, you know, he kind of throws the gun and they all come up and like they're like, what happened? And he's like, oh, because they assumed because right before the lynch mob started, the guy with the gun goes to find the gun. He's like, my gun's not here. And so they think that Lennie's taken it, which is crazy, but
Yeah.
you know, George makes kind of thing like, yeah, he had the gun, I got it from him, I took care of business. And Slim shows so much compassion for George right now and like what the real loss was for him because he can see what really happened.
Yeah.
And they just kind of walk off together and he's comforting him and everybody else is like, what was that about?
Yeah.
End book.
What are those two guys talking about? Not the tragic loss of a character who probably needed to be medicated and like helped and
Yeah,
ways that
taken
he
care of.
wasn't.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how it ends on a real high note. And yeah, that's Of Mice and Men.
So I didn't know how this book ended, and my brother totally spoiled it for me. I was talking to my brother about it, and he's like, "Oh, this is the one where like George shoots Lennie at the end." And
Oh, no.
I said, "You cannot tell me
Keith.
that because I'm already having a hard enough time with this book. I hate every moment of this. Please don't tell me that I actually need to finish this for the podcast."
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah.
You'll hear this in like next year about this time when you finally catch up like you do.
But yeah, anyway, I still kind of loved the book. I know. Only for like this because of the okay, if I take out all of the N-words, and that's pretty much if I take all of the racism out and everything, I just remember like it gave me great, it made me have fond memories. I don't know. 15-year-old me was like, I still really like this book.
Nostalgia moment.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm sorry, Sam. Sam's looking at me very
I
disappointedly.
just disagree strongly with every part of that. I just think I finally realized by reading this one how much I dislike Steinbeck. I disliked Grapes of Wrath. In high school, I liked East of Eden, and then I reread it and was like, I disliked it. He's like you guys described the first chapter where it's just like nothing happens, but there's 800 descriptor words. Like,
yes,
he's just writing shit for the sake of writing shit.
Yeah,
and all the characters say like again, it's all that used car salesman. Like, it brought me back to there's a chapter where they're selling like a crappy car, this like jalopy in Grapes of Wrath, and it's a whole chapter with basically this used car salesman is just talking over and over, and he just says, I mean, I'm saying it now, over just the same shit over and over. It drives me bonkers.
So you rate it pretty high, I'm guessing.
No rabbits out of 10 rabbits.
Oh, jeez.
0 out of 10 rabbits.
Okay,
0 out of
I'll
10
give it 1 rabbit because it's got cultural relevance.
Okay.
So why do you think it's got cultural relevance?
Oh, like the scene at the end is like parodied and other
Yeah.
things where you have the talk, you know, like look into the
Okay.
sunset, lady, tell me about what you see, boom, you know.
Mhm.
I think there are references, and I do think it has cultural relevance in that it is very much of a time. Like a lot of Steinbeck's books are that, where they talk about people.
Mhm.
He talks about disadvantaged people in a time where there were a lot of disadvantaged people. So I appreciate that for that sake, that like he's talking about migrant workers, and like my family were Okies that moved out to California. Like, I'm happy that there are books about Okies.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't love it.
1
But
out of 10 rabbits. Okay.
1 out of 10 rabbits.
What about you, Boyana? What would you rate it?
You
I
can
don't
pick
know.
whatever rating
Yeah, we-
scale
Oh, no,
you
I'm-
want.
I'm
You make them up.
thinking, so I don't have to rate in rabbits.
No, anything you want.
So I can rate in plushes.
Plushes.
It's plushes that would have been a solution to many problems in this book. I'd probably give it something around a 5 or a 6, I think,
Out of 10 plushies?
out of 10 plushes. Because I thought the depiction of a time and place was important. I didn't love all the characters, but I do think that some of them, like George, were well portrayed and given a level of complexity, and the rest of them just seemed to be like a side cast or background cast, whatever they're called.
This is like when Matt was complaining about Ted Lasso about trying to give too many characters backstory.
It's a little bit like that. It's a little bit like that.
Yeah.
So it did read as a Cliff Notes quick fiction almost. Like what I would have imagined would be a like a paperback book in the 20s. So,
Like the pulp magazines that they're reading. In the
right.
bunkhouse.
Yeah. So, and I don't think it aged very well.
Yeah.
I think just because some of the characters are pretty one-dimensional, it would have probably aged much better if it had a little bit more subtleties in it. So yeah, 5 out of 10 plushes for me.
I give it one sparkling tube of red lipstick. Like I think out of one. Okay,
One out of one. Ooh,
damn.
Well, I will
She
say-
busted out the ostrich feather shoes for this.
Yeah, I just think like overall, like if I took out all of the black stuff where they're using the hard R, like I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah.
I'm not even a fan of that of like, oh, it's culturally significant. Nope, let's just take it out. But I think that like, especially for like high school students reading this, especially young high school students, I think you can pull a lot out for conversation.
Yeah.
And I like that part of like, it's not too deep for them to like, it's not too heady.
Yeah.
The concepts aren't too, there's not too much to follow, that I think they could really get into it and have really interesting conversations about, like we said before, migrant workers, about how women are portrayed in books, like about what options were available for women and people of color back then. Like, what does it mean to care for someone? You know, like I think that there's some interesting conversations, and that's why I liked it.
Yeah, maybe that makes sense that it's like, you know, freshman year of high school assigned reading.
Yeah.
So, because I think what bothered me was that it did read like a youth book a little bit.
What did you think?
Well, he's 15, so he doesn't necessarily tell me what he thinks. Even though I did ask. So I think we did have a brief conversation in the car when he's a captive audience in the morning, so he has to talk to me for a span of like 10 minutes. So so he did, I think of it more in terms of like, oh, there's people working on a farm. So more from like the social aspect of the narrative of the book. And I kind of pointed out that in my view, it was more about this, you know, universal feeling of loneliness and how people deal with it in different, especially in difficult circumstances. And I think at the time I guess this was early in their reading of the books. I don't know how much analysis they've done to it, but I don't think that was something that was on his radar. So I should go. I think they're done with it now, so he may be done reading. So I think I might go and take him for a car ride around the neighborhood and force him to talk to me a little bit about it, to see what his thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I might corner him at the next barbecue and ask him, because I'm curious on, you know, again, the Steinbeck effect. I think you read these things in high school, and it is very profound for a high school audience.
So I think maybe that's maybe what's the appeal and the cultural significance to it. Yeah, it's just something, a way to introduce kids to a complex topic, but without all the layers in a like an adult novel. So.
So, in quite the departure, next month, we are reading Dear Diary #1, The Party, which was published in 1989. So, I found this gem in a collection of books my mom gave to me from our storage unit. So,
well, I am amped to leave the land of Steinbeck and go back to the land of solid 7th grade literature.
Yeah, it's going to be real good.
Yeah.
I can already tell, just based on the fact that it says diary in the cover. And I'm already searching for, there's going to be a sweet treat next month, because I found some of my old diaries I'm going to share.
Are you?
And they are real spicy.
I know what cocktail we're going to make. I told you about this. Get ready, people. It's going to be trash.
Spicy trash.
Spicy trash.
Oh, spicy trash. Courtesy
trash for sure.
of a youthful person off of my Frisbee team.
Oh, gosh.
Spicy
Terrified.
Trash.
All right. Well, happy reading, and thanks, Steinbeck. If you're enjoying Boozy Book Reports and would like to support the show, you can share episodes with your friends and family, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Boozy Book Report, or leave us a positive review and rating, all which help us to grow. Our theme music was created by the Finley Ghost. Check out their latest album now. Thank you and happy reading.